Howdy everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Lily and Generoso. Today we're going to make my version of Banh Xeo. Every Vietnamese restaurant has this almost always. It's a very traditional appetizer. You'll often see it called either a Vietnamese pizza or Vietnamese crepe. It's traditionally made with pork and shrimp inside and also bean sprouts. Growing up, I never liked the shrimp part of it inside because often what they would do when you get it in a restaurant, they wouldn't shell the shrimp. You just put the shrimp with the shells inside, and I always thought that was kind of a sad interruption of kind of the beautiful texture of the crepe. So as I grew up, anytime I would eat Banh Xeo and somebody was making it, I'd always beg for them to make it without the shrimp. And so I would only eat it with the pork and the bean sprouts, and that's actually how we're going to make it today. So this is a little bit of a lengthy prep process because there are a lot of different components. So there's the dough component for the crepe itself, then you have the filling component, and you have the serving component, and each of those require quite a bit of prep. So let's go into the ingredients list, and then I'll show you each prep process as we go, because the dough is actually going to have to sit for a little bit. Alright, so first we have soybean sprouts. You can use mung bean sprouts. Normally most people use mung bean sprouts. I just like the texture of soybean sprouts because they're a little chewier than mung beans. And they're also a little hardier in that they're a little heavier than the mung bean sprouts, which tend to wilt really easily and get mushy a little bit faster. So I'm just going with that this time. So I have a powder premix of Banh Xeo. Essentially it's just the flour. It is rice flour, I think, with a tiny bit of tapioca starch. And if you notice, there's this magical yellow strip at the top. That's actually turmeric. So you could premix this with, like, if you had turmeric and tapioca starch and rice flour, which pretty much, you know, the rice flour and tapioca starch every Vietnamese home tends to have. We have it here at the Fiera house. Turmeric is kind of the part that not all houses have, but if you have it, go for it. Otherwise, if you can go to an Asian grocery store that has Vietnamese ingredients, buy the premix. Outside of that, I have half a cup of mung beans. Those have been soaking in warm water for a few hours. It doesn't matter really how long. You just want to soak them so that they are soft, because the Banh Xeo powder will actually tell you, like, what the total ingredients you need to make the dough are. And it's really the dough, the flour, and the turmeric, and water, and coconut milk. But I remembered, as I was trying to reminisce on how I used to eat this as a kid, that a couple of family members, kind of distant family members, used to make theirs with some ground mung bean in it, and that's how I'm actually going to make mine today. So then you have a can of coconut milk, and some sugar, some salt. We have fish sauce, which is going to be used for our dipping at the end. I have some oyster sauce. We have some garlic powder. I have some soy sauce, some black pepper. I have about 6 limes that are going to be used for the dipping fish sauce. I have a ton of green onions, the scallions, that we'll be using with the actual dough of the Banh Xeo or crepe. We have about a half a pound of pork, very finely cut. This is pork loin. You can really use anything you want. Some recipes call for pork belly. I always like leaner pork as a rule of thumb, so I'm using pork loin today with some of the fat trimmed off. And then outside of that, we have romaine lettuce, and we have some mint. If you want, you can also get some Thai basil, but you notice that that's in a completely separate bowl because that's going to be used for serving. We're not really going to do anything to it but wash it and clean it. Because the best part of Banh Xeo is actually once the crepe part is done, you roll it up in lettuce and then you dip it into the fish sauce. So the fish sauce is actually going to be exactly like what we've done in the past. It's equal parts lime to equal parts sugar to equal parts water and equal parts fish sauce. So that's probably a part that we may not show you this time because we actually showed it to you when we were making banh cuong a few weeks ago. But otherwise, you'll see all the other steps. So we're going to spend a little bit of time prepping everything, and we'll see you back in a few minutes. So we've done a little bit of the prep for the dough. So first things first, we ground the mung beans with about a teaspoon of sugar and a teaspoon of salt, and probably 3 or 4 tablespoons of water. Just basically, I only drained off some of the top, so you'll notice it's kind of this frothy liquid now with the mung bean paste at the bottom, which is good. We've opened up our can of coconut milk, and we've measured out 3 cups of water into this container. So in order to make the dough, what I'm going to do, pour out my mung bean mixture into this. So we have a nice large mixing bowl. Want to make sure you get out all the mung bean. That'll add a nice nuttiness to all of this. So now I'm going to add my 3 cups of water. I'm going to now add a cup of coconut milk. And maybe just like a little quarter more for good measure, just because I like the flavor. You can, of course, not do this, but I like the flavor of coconut milk, and I think it really brings the dough to life. And so now we're going to add our actual dough mix. I'm going to use my handy dandy knife. First I'm going to put the rice powder component in.
Are you going to use the whole bag, Lily?
Yes, we're going to use the entire bag.
Groovy.
Lot of flour in here. Alright, so we've emptied the entire bag. It's a 12-ounce bag. And now we're going to cut open the turmeric packet at the top and put all the turmeric in as well. And the turmeric is going to give the Banh Xeo a really beautiful yellow color. And it also offsets the coconut milk really nicely.
So folks who don't normally use turmeric, how do you describe the taste?
I kind of think of it as a more, almost like licorice curry in a way. Okay. But turmeric is not the primary flavor in this dough. It's really the richness and kind of the deliciousness of this really comes from the coconut milk that's used inside and the mung bean. So I've emptied out all of my turmeric.
Alright.
And now we're just going to mix this dough until there are no lumps.
Now once it's all mixed down, this is going to have to sit for a while now.
Yep, it's going to have to sit for at least an hour. Some people will say only 20 minutes. I think the rule of thumb with this, like with Banh Xeo, is that the lighter and fluffier you want your dough to be, the longer you should let it sit together and assemble. There's some recipes that will say you only need it to set for 20 minutes. In fact, the instructions on this bag say let it sit for only 20 minutes. But to be safe, I'm going to let it actually sit for an hour. And some people will even let it sit overnight before they make the crepe as well, just so that it's a little lighter. So that is all mixed together, and we're just going to let it sit for an hour, and in the meantime we're going to make some other things. So I'm just going to clean up this mixing area, and we'll see you right back for the next steps for the other parts of Banh Xeo. Alright, so we've done a little bit more prep in the meantime while we're still waiting for this dough to kind of settle. So Jean has nicely cut the pork into little strips. This is probably, each is about like between a ½ inch or a little bit over ½ inch. And we're just going to marinate the pork so that it gets tasty during the same time that the dough is settling and rising. So all I'm going to do, it's going to be a very simple marinade. Put about a tablespoon of soy sauce in. Tablespoon of oyster sauce. Alright, and then 2 2 dashes of garlic powder. And then probably about a teaspoon of black pepper. And I'm just going to take my hands and mix it all together. So this is going to make sure that the pork that is included within the Banh Xeo is actually tasty. Sometimes you'll eat this in a restaurant, it's not really tasty. That's always a little disappointing to me, because even though this is served with fish sauce on the side to dip everything in, I think that if you're going to have pork in it, it should be tasty pork. So we're gonna let this sit for also about an hour and marinate. And in the meantime, Jean's actually already squeezed the lime juice. So we're actually going to go ahead and make the fish sauce as well. And we will probably see you back in about an hour. Alright, welcome back everybody. It's been well over an hour now and our batter has been sitting for our Banh Xeo. And we have assembled a Banh Xeo station.
Look at this mess. It's fantastic.
So I have microwaved the soybean bean sprouts in them for about 1 minute, just to give them a little bit of a steam so they're not so raw. Here is our dough, nice and frothy and ready to make Banh Xeo. Here's our bowl of green onions. Here is our marinated pork, and here is our sauté oil, which I am using instead of olive oil just because it heats a little bit better and it's a little easier to deal with in terms of the non-stick. And here is our friend, the frying pan. This is a non-stick pan. I have the heat on about a medium-high. And make sure that you do this with a nice non-stick pan, because it's really important that the crepe doesn't stick too badly onto the pan itself. So let's try and make our Banh Xeo. So as with any pancake, the first one isn't always so hot, and so we've actually made one and I've tried it.
And it came out nicely, but we want the perfect one for the audience.
Yes, so I'm going to put some oil into this pan. Quite a bit of it. I'm going to put now about 4 chunks of pork onto the pan, fry it up in the oil. What's nice about frying the pork in the oil first before you put your crepe batter down is that you'll actually get some of the pork flavor into the oil, and also some of the fat from the pork will render down into the oil itself, helping with the non-stick and the flavor elements of all of it.
That smells nice.
Yeah. And now I'm going to add some green onion. And now I'm going to put all of my pork on the one side of the pan. This is going to basically help me when I need to flip my pancake over. What I'm going to do now, give the batter a mix. Get a nice ladle of this. And pour it on in. Probably get it a tiny bit more as well. Alrighty. And then what I am going to do, in order to make sure that the batter for the Banh Xeo cooks at the middle, all I'm going to do is just put a cutting board right over it to let some of the steam cook the center.
Excellent.
And we are going to let this steam probably for about 3 to 4 minutes. So we'll see you back in about 3 to 4 minutes, and we'll actually show you how you're going to flip all of this. So we've actually given the Banh Xeo 5 minutes to cook. If you look down at it, all this middle is nice and cooked. And what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to loosen up all the edges and make sure things are not sticking. You want to make sure that this never sticks. And now I'm going to put some of the bean sprouts in. Notice I'm putting it onto the side where the meat is, because that's where I'm actually going to take this side without any of the filling and flip it onto that.
Alright.
You don't want to put too much bean sprout on it. It's kind of a balance in terms of both flavor and the ability to flip this buddy. And so, often you'll only see me use chopsticks for things. This is an occasion where I actually will use a spatula and a combination of a chopstick. So I'm just going to use a chopstick to peel up the edge, and then I'm going to use my spatula to help me with this. It's always tricky getting that first fold over. Kind of have to do a combination of both. Sometimes it'll just break at the end of the day. That's okay. But overall, you should be able to get most of the crepe over. So you see, I've nicely folded that one up. We lost a little bit of edge along the way. That's okay. That's always going to happen. What I'm going to do is actually take my chopsticks, slide this toward the center, releasing that bit from the edge. That way we don't have to worry about it sticking. I'm going to let this cook for a little bit, maybe 30 seconds. And that is our Banh Xeo. So what we're going to do now is we're going to scoop it onto a plate. Take a nice spatula and very quickly transfer it. And there you go. That is Banh Xeo. I'll dress it with lettuce on the side, which we washed and showed earlier, and you can serve with a little bit of mint as well, and you'll serve it with fish sauce. And the way that you should actually eat it is that you should roll it up. But we'll see you actually in a couple of minutes after I finish frying them, and I'll actually show you how to pull apart a Banh Xeo and eat it and roll it up the way that you normally would if you were like at a Banh Xeo party, as I called it earlier. We'll see you made one more Banh Xeo, and this one's actually really great looking. And I can explain to you why it's great looking. So, you noticed when I actually was showing you how to assemble them, that the Banh Xeo fell apart a little bit. That's actually because I did not cook the dough enough. So, the first time your Banh Xeo dough goes down, it might stick a little bit, and as with any time, as we've mentioned before, you make pancakes, you make crepes, that first one is going to stick. But that's okay, and then the one afterwards should be really nice and easy to make, and that means that you can actually let the Banh Xeo dough cook a little bit longer. So this Banh Xeo that's very nice and pretty actually cooked for longer than the other one with the cutting board on top. So I think that's a good way to gauge it, because everybody's stove is a little bit different. If you notice that your Banh Xeo is falling apart, just start to kind of increment and give it a little bit more time. And really, truthfully, this is one of those kinds of doughs that actually gets more delicious as it gets crunchier. So don't worry, and if you have a good nonstick pan and you've gone past your first one, it'll still look really beautiful. So I want to show you now how you eat this actually. So we have one piece of lettuce, we have a couple of leaves of mint, and the way that you do this is really, really not elegant whatsoever. It's all with your hands. So I'm going to break this lettuce in half, and then I'm just going to break off some of the Banh Xeo. It's okay if it's not entirely even. I know part of you must be thinking like, oh man, what happened? You made that pretty pancake. But it's really delicious this way. I'm gonna put one leaf of mint. And then here is my fish sauce, which I made during the dough resting break. And I'm going to take a little bit of fish sauce, pour it on top of the Banh Xeo and the lettuce, and then just roll it on up into one nice bite.
And that's how you eat your Banh Xeo. So they are really delicious as they come out of the pan. So if you can eat it right out of the pan, do it. It does sit for a little bit, but really Banh Xeo is the most delicious when it's just coming out of the pan and it's still crunchy but a little bit soft inside, and it's really, really delicious. And with the mint and the lettuce and the fish sauce, it adds a little bit of brightness to all of it into one really, really delectable bite. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know how it goes whenever you make it.